Today, guys, I want to talk about something important with men's mental health rate, and that being is why do men take shit to the grave? Just think about it. Like we all know a guy who has worked hard his own life. I mean, has worked hard his whole life, and then maybe passed away, or just maybe just isn't in the best spot. And you ask him what's wrong, and he's just like, "Oh, I'm fine." Or if he does open up, he doesn't really say much. He just like, yeah, well, life sucks. Work is hard and da da da. And it's because being vulnerable is preyed upon in our society. So women deal with this too. It's not just a male issue. It's not just it's a problem that affects a capitalistic society, specifically first world countries, so-called first world countries. Our society is really built on the backs of hardworking people. We know black people, formerly slaves in this country, built the entire infrastructure of this nation. Black people built everything. Yes, there were indentured slaves, indentured servants. Yes, there were. Let's not get into that, right? We know black people, and I'll say it again. We know black people built this country. This shit belongs to us at the end of the day, point blank, period. I don't care what anyone else has to say. If you feel different, feel free to unfollow me, block me. I don't give a fuck. If you report me, I'm on your ass though. Right? So you have a generation of people that were literally fresh out of slavery, and some even after slavery so-called ended. Shout to Lincoln. He actually didn't. The Emancipation Proclamation didn't actually free the slaves, but still, shout to him. Honorable mention, right? Abraham Lincoln. That generation of people that were fresh out of slavery, a lot of them had to go back to picking cotton still. They went from being slaves to sharecroppers, which was basically slavery with extra steps because now they were being paid. But why free slaves and why pay them? Why even fight a war in the first place to free the slaves? The Civil War was not about freeing the slaves. And everything I'm saying is going to tie into what I first said in the intro when I was like, this is a issue I see disproportionately affecting men, right? Or just an issue in first world countries, right? So Lincoln, he's from up north. He's raised around industrial. The north is like the northern states are expanding. They're starting to get inventions like the cotton gin, cotton press, whatever. And the South is hanging on to all these slaves, which are their wealth. So Lincoln becomes president, and he's like, okay, we can either free slaves and stimulate the economy because if we give them money, right, and we know for a fact that the black dollar is the strongest dollar in our economy, actually across the world. The black community has unequivocal spending power compared to other ethnicities, right? Other races, as we call them. So Lincoln is like, if we free the slaves and give them their own money, that will make our economy stronger. If everyone has money, because the only people who were getting paid were these white, rich plantation owners, the white slavers, the slave owners. So also these slave plantations take up a lot of land. Lincoln, the North wanted that land. They wanted to put their factories there. They wanted to put schools there. They wanted to build the infrastructure for business and commerce there. But it was at the time occupied by slavery. So in that situation, there's not much money going around the economy, right? You get what I'm saying? Like, sure, poor white people in the South had it better than slaves, but they were still in very shitty conditions. Like, and that's something that has always tripped me up is why would poor white Southerners who benefit from nothing of slavery fight so hard to keep slavery in place? Well, that's because they need someone to have a leg up on. They know that without slavery, they are in the same exact predicament, in the same boat as these slaves. And also, a lot of these poor white Southerners, as we would call them now, Hicks, or, and I mean, no offense to anyone, but we would call these people Hicks, we would call them rednecks, hillbillies. They were uneducated. They were laymen. Um, Most of them did not have skills or trades or even jobs. Some were homeless. So the white rich plantation owners, the slavers as I call them, they realized, hey, if we can give them something to fight for, say the KKK, if we create a strong enough reason for them to not only hate blacks, but to fight to keep them down, we can keep ourselves in power. See, like the problem with capitalism is that while yes, it does heavily, disproportionately affect African Americans and minorities, black minorities, negatively, it's never been about skin color. That is a fucking distraction. That's the main thing that they can use to keep moving the goalposts to keep people distracted. It's not about black versus white. It's about rich versus poor. It doesn't matter what skin color you are. If you have the money, you're respected. And something about rich people is they don't really care a lot about respect. There's always outliers. Like if there's someone who made it out the mud, had to grind their whole life, and then they stepped into wealth as a later in life from their hard work. Sure, that person is gonna want nothing but respect and be respectful all around the board. But people who have daddy's money, hedge fund kids, people who are the upper class elite of society, people who had things handed to them, people who had a small business loan of what $1 billion, $1 million. Those people don't understand what it's like to be a hardworking American. So the point I'm getting at, right, is our ancestors, our not so distant ancestors, because slavery has not been over for that long. I suggest y'all read the Willie Lynch letters, and I'll put it up here. Willie Lynch letters. I want y'all to check that out. Slavery's only been over for some 300 and maybe 10 years now. Maybe. That generation, right, our great grandparents and their grandparents, they didn't get a break. So once they're free and they're integrated and assimilated back into society, their battle is not over yet. So when it comes to them raising their children, our parents, our grandparents, their grandparents, when it comes to them rearing their children, they don't have a lot of sympathy or empathy for issues because the world they grew up in was harsh as fuck. These are people that are fresh off the plantation who literally just a day ago might have been being whipped, might have been being beat, might have been being raped by slave owners. These are people that came from nothing, had everything stripped away from them, had everything that they were beaten out of them. So when they start having children, outside of the plantation, our grandparents and shit, like my grandmother's parents, my great grandparents, they picked cotton. They weren't slaves, but they were still picking cotton. My grandma grew up during Jim Crow, so you can imagine her dad. Yeah, I never met the guy, and I don't know much about my great granddad, but I'm just gonna assume like most of the generation, they were not so lovey-dovey. Yes, and of course there's always outliers. I'm sure he was a great father to my grandmother. Um, But the point I'm getting at is that that generation and then the generations after, they, like I said, did not have much empathy. Um, Imagine you grew up in the MLK days, in the Malcolm X days, being a part of that generation, and then compared to the our generation, Gen Z, and the millennials that get so much hate, our problems don't seem as bad to them. And regardless of if that's true or not, the point I'm getting at is that when you come from such a hard lifestyle, it is hard. It is difficult for you to give a fuck about what anyone else has to go on. My parents came from the generation of their parents, which was basically, I provided for you, so shut up and get out my face. You want me to do all this extracurricular shit? You want me to take you fishing? You want me to hold your hand? You want me to ride bikes with you? You want me to come to your school play? No. I go to work, I pay the bills, I put food in your mouth, I put clothes on your back, so shut the fuck up and get the fuck out of my face. That's the generation my parents come from. My dad is like, what, 65? My mom is in her 50s now. So their parents, and again, always outliers, there's always outliers, but just like my granddad on my dad's side, he fought in the war. He literally fought in the Battle of the Bulge. He was a hardened Marine, and a lot of the males in my family have served in the military. So, like my dad, for example, I am blessed to have my dad in my life as a black man. I know not every black man can say that, and it's something that black men seem to not be comfortable talking about. A lot of black men still try to hang on to this image of being hard a gangster. So it's not like in the rap scene, it's not cool to have a dad. In the rap scene, it's not cool to have good grades in school, right? Everyone has a story of, oh, my teacher told me I wouldn't be shit. My dad was never there type shit. My dad is in my life. My dad has always been in my life. But for me, it was my mom that was the more um, emotionally unavailable parent. And that's because her dad, my granddad, he was not emotionally available for her in her childhood or, most of her adult life until he passed. So now we have us, right? Our generation. Taking everything I just said, right? Taking everything I just said into consideration, the history and how these different generations treated their children and raised them. Now, compare that to how our parents raised us. I'm 24. I'll be 25 this year, at the end of this month, actually. Take in mind how our parents, why's my hand up? But take in mind how our parents raised us. A lot of our parents were coming from mild success. I think a lot of times the image of black people is always painted as being poor and lesser than, but there's a lot of wealthy black Americans, African Americans, either. It doesn't, there's a lot of black people, there's a lot of people with this skin color that are very successful in this world. And everyone after slavery did not just stay down. There were a lot of very successful, like pharmacy, drugstore owners, bankers, all kinds of people who and literally pulled themselves up by the bootstraps and became successful. So some of those people were in my family too. Some of my ancestors were drugstore owners. So no, it's not like the generation before us, our parents were just like completely poor, right? But what happened was in 2008, we hit a Great Depression, and that synced our economy. And who was in president? Was it Clinton? Was Clinton president in 2008? I have to do my research to make sure that's accurate. But we know Obama became president in 2008. He basically pulled us out in the next, you know, 4 years that he'd be president. He pulled us out of that. But that was a difficult time to be in. I think I have my record wrong, my timeline wrong when Obama became president. It's okay, yeah, 2008. I remember in elementary, middle school, doing the like mock elections at school, and we all voted for Obama. Okay, that's correct. That's before Sleepy Joe became Sleepy Joe. Okay, moving on. Yeah, so a lot of what the ways they raised us was kind of similar to how their parents raised them, which was, I provided for you, don't bother me. And something we did start to see though is that um there's less restriction in the workplace. Natural hair started to become more accepted, slightly, not all the way. You couldn't just walk in with a big ass afro, unless you're the CEO. But the workplace started to become more inclusive and friendly to black and brown minorities. So there is more upward mobility. Most families at this point are middle class. Um, and a lot of black people are starting to move up higher in society, get better paying jobs. My mom has worked in corporate most of her life. She's done accounting. She's always had office jobs. She's never really had to just like bust her ass. She's always been like in the office doing work on a computer or filing. Even she's even done like reception work. So and she went to college. Um, she's one of the few people in my family that went to college and graduated, got her bachelor's. So um, it's not all bad, but then the recession hits in 2008, and now it is harder for parents to be present because when you're in a depression, the only thing you have time to focus on is money. Because if you guys don't know what a depression does, it literally sinks the economy. So things become too expensive to afford, like groceries, while the money that you're able to earn keeps going down. Kind of like now, we're in a recession now, though, which is a little different. But if I have these terms wrong, please correct me. I'm just, hey. So when this depression hits, dude, like, I remember, I'm not saying we were like rich or anything. We were just like a lower middle class family. Lived in we same house, lived in a decent neighborhood. I mean, it's in the hood. It's surrounded by the hood, but my neighborhood specifically is decent. It's kind of out the way. It's not. It's in the middle of the hood, but it's still like it's not a gated community, but there's still like nicer houses, in this, it's a decent neighborhood, but as soon as you walk off the street, back, you're literally just in the middle of the hood. So, like we used to do a lot of shit. We used to go to like Shakespeare in the Park. That was free, but we used to do a lot of like extracurricular activities as a family. The depression hits in 2008, and I remember like, man, I did not get a new pair of shoes for like 3 school years. And I was so sad about it that I wrote my mom a well thought out note, like a letter, explaining why I should get a new pair of shoes and how it'll help me and that I'm being bullied at school. And she read it, and sure enough, she took me to the store and bought me a 35, might have been $40 at the time, a $40 pair of Adidas Superstars, the white and green ones. I was fresh as fuck. Later, I end up getting the matching tracksuit with it too. My dad bought me that, so I had the green Adidas tracksuit with the white and green striped Adidas Superstars. I was fresh. But at that time, right, Adidas Superstars were only $40, 35, 30 on sale. If you could really catch a deal, they might be like 25 for sure. And kids' prices, they were like really cheap. I was wearing like a size 5 or 6, dude. My shoes were really cheap back then. Like 40 for Superstars today is like, I think Superstars are like 100 now, or like they're up there at like 70, 80. And the Stan Smiths and the Gazelles, they're like dead as $100, 90 to like one. They're the same price as Air Force Ones now, and Air Force Ones are now 110 plus taxes. So basically 115 after you get done paying taxes. Like, so just imagine how cheap things were, and then all of a sudden everything becomes like you can't afford it. Can't afford it. So all the time we spend at the park or going to like all these different events and stuff outside, regardless if they were free or not, now there's less of that because gas prices started rising. In my dad's era, gas might have been like a quarter, maybe. Like, in my grandpa's era, gas was only a couple cents, maybe 10, 15 cents. In my dad's era, gas started to go up about $1 by the time I came around. In 2008, I think gas had finally hit like 250, and that was insane. No one like everyone was losing their. I remember the conversations, overhearing the conversations as a kid. The adults around me, everyone was freaking out. They're like, the world is fucking ending. Gas is 250. I think gas had even gone up to $3 at one point. Like, people started buying jerry cans in surplus and filling them up with gas when gas was cheaper on certain days because they were afraid that we would run out. Everyone thought that basically people thought we were running out of gasoline and fuel for cars, so everyone was in a frenzy to buy these jerry cans and get gasoline for the cars. And so just, with all that in mind, I am, again, not just going on tangents, tying all this back together, is that in those conditions, it is hard to raise a kid with love. I'm not saying that love wasn't there at all. I'm just saying that when you've been comfortable for some time in your life and then the economy suddenly crashes and you don't have job security and you can no longer afford the basic necessities and now rent is like a problem. Making rent is like your top priority. It can be very difficult to give your children the love and support that they need. A lot of it goes to um a lot of it just goes to the kids having to raise themselves. And I'm not saying I was an orphan, both my parents were in my life, but I had to at some point like learn how to cook and clean and do laundry, and at very young age, like 6, 7, might have been 5, like learn how to cook, how to clean, learn who to answer the door for, learn how to take calls, like all that shit, and get myself ready for school in the morning, go catch the bus without being told to. Like, parents already gone by the time I wake up, so like there was not a lot of oversight for me personally. And a lot of children in my era, from my generation, we grew up that way. Like, we had to raise ourselves, as a lot of people did from any generation, but we had to be adults at a young age, and we were being faced with real world things that we weren't yet ready for. And I'll go into that in another video if I want to get deeper on that and get more personal. But yeah, it's for black boys growing up during that time, the only choice you had was be in a gang or be a hooper, or be a football star or basketball star. So if you weren't in sports and you weren't in a gang, you were lame. If you weren't wearing Nikes, if you didn't have like Air Maxes or the Jordans or Air Forces, you were lame. I had the superstars, which were popular at the time, but like that was my only pair of shoes. That was my only pair of shoes. I remember having like 2 shirts in my wardrobe. Big ass ward, what's it called? The shit the wardrobe, the whatever it's called. I only had like 2 shirts and like one pair of pants outside of my school uniform. I had like one pair of pants and 2 shirts, one pair of shoes that would get replaced like every 2 or 3 school years, basically until they had holes in them. Um, I got bullied a lot, bro, and the adults did nothing about it. And when I remember complaining to my parents about being sad, basically the response I got was toughen up, was deal with it. My mom told me to pray about it. And I'm sure she meant well, but me being 8 years old, feeling suicidal, saying, "Hey, I don't feel okay. I think I need to go to therapy or get medicine," and her saying, "No, just pray." It's like that was not the advice I needed to hear. I do recall praying a lot, and my problems got worse to the point where I completely withdrew, and I just became this unemotional, kind of very rigid person. I went deeply into the shadow of my Aquarius energy, which was the like cold detachment. I detached from everything. I did start to meditate at the age, but I remember just feeling very disconnected from society, from my family. I remember feeling like I didn't belong, and I know a lot of people feel that way, even today, 2025. Some people, I still feel that way sometimes, honestly. But being a black boy growing up in the early 2000s, it's like, you weren't in the game, you weren't playing sports, you didn't fit in, and there was really no room for you. So, um, I actually made this a separate video, but I'll post some clips of it. But in the previous video, I was talking about, that's why Odd Future was so powerful and impactful and important to people like me growing up, because there was nothing like that. Like, you had Lil Wayne, you had the Gorillas, you had Weird Al, but like Weird Al and the Gorillas are all white. Besides, what's his name, the ghost guy, that what's his name, Daz from the Gorillas. Okay, he's black, but like, as weird as Lil Wayne was, he was still very mainstream, very like gangster persona. So like, he wasn't really speaking to me as a. He wasn't really speaking. His lyrics are fucking banging, but he just wasn't like speaking to my soul how Tyler the Creator was when I was a little boy. Because being 12 years old and hearing Yonkers is like, okay, this is weird. The, Eating the fucking cockroach on camera is fucking crazy. And then the whole wave that our features sprung onto society was like, I like this shit. I was like, I felt like I belonged. Like, that whole era of music, not even that era of music, just that collective specifically was like a core component of my childhood. Me feeling like I belong, me feeling like it's okay to be weird and different when, everyone for the most part just wanted to be this cool ass motherfucker. And it's like, black boys did not have that chance to be different, bruh. I'm telling you, like, you can say all day, just be yourself. That's the bit. Like, no, bro. Like, I was, I've always been intelligent, bro. Me being smart in public school as a child, bro, that shit instantly had me isolated and outcast. I was instantly the black sheep. As soon as they found out I had a big vocabulary, why you talk like that? That's what I was met with, bro. Like, and a lot of black kids went through that. So like, yes, it was cool to be dumb back then. No one wanted to be seen as smart, bro. If the teacher called for volunteers to read, no one wanted to read because no one wanted to be seen or heard with a big vocabulary. No one wanted to know. No one wanted anyone to know that they were smart, and you would get picked on. Like, you would get beat up just for being intelligent. Like, bullies would gravitate towards you and try to make you do their homework. I know it's an old trope, but just like, it was not acceptable to be different. It wasn't acceptable to be weird. It wasn't acceptable to be soft. It wasn't acceptable to have feelings. No one gave a fuck. I vividly remember having problems with some kids at school and telling an older teacher about it. Older black man. He basically told me to defend myself. I'm like, I don't want to fight these niggas. I just want the problem to go away. I wasn't trying to fight anybody. I wasn't trying to get into nothing. I just, it's like, basically told me toughen up or shut the fuck up. Like, if you're not gonna put hands on these niggas and make them shut up, then just roll over. That's what it was like in the era. So it's like, it's crazy seeing now where like society has shifted and men are starting to have more safe places for them to be vulnerable. And that's beautiful. I did not have that growing up. Maybe my dad at times when he was available, but man, like, again, my dad, he worked like 2 or 3 jobs. After the depression, he was working like 2 or 3 jobs, bro. So the time he was home and the time that he actually had time for me when he was home are two different things. So most of the time, bro, my ass was on the computer. That was my babysitter. My parents would even tell you that it was easy. Didn't have to hire anyone. It keeps me entertained for hours. I'm just sitting there on a screen. And it's also such a crazy shit because our generation, bro, us Gen Zers, we fucking grew up in such a crazy shift. Like, the shift from like limited technology, no cell phones, like very rough computers that weren't very powerful, basically no internet, to like iPods, uh, flat screen TVs in just like 10 years. That shift happened in 10 short years. We went from being like everyone plays outside, you meet people by actually going outside and speaking to people, to online dating. Online dating was not a thing in the 90s. Like they're just the the internet was not what we know it as now today. I think you had to have some like big ass like file disk, like the like floppy disk, the like square thing with the code on it, and you had to plug that into you had to like insert that in your disk drive to like I think even go on websites. Like I think you had to have the disk drive of the website to even load it, but it wasn't online there was no internet, right? So with the internet now, children, boys, men, whoever have access to all these resources that we did not have growing up, bro. So, if you're a man, even if you're a woman, if you struggle with isolation, I am going to make this for my fellas, though, because women, I'll just say this, y'all have all the social insulation and support in the world. You can go down the street on any block and just look sad. Someone's going to walk up to you and make sure you're good. Someone's going to make sure you are straight. Men don't typically get that response. So, um, there's alternative access healing, which is a great, I think they're located only in Missouri and Rolla, but there's alternative access. SLU has great online counseling, online therapy, and they can reduce your fee depending on how much. They have a sliding scale fee. There's BJC, there's ADAPT. Um, those are both nonprofit healthcare organizations that help with mental health. So if you need a caseworker, if you need a job specialist, this is someone. BJC is great with that. BJC has the best job counselors, job specialists. So basically, if you're looking for work, they will sit down with you, make you a competitive resume that will get you the interview at least. You may not get the job every time, but they will make you an interview that is competitive enough that can pass the AI checkers that will get you a job. And the job specialist, their job is to stay with you until you have been employed for 6 months. So you will meet with them like every week, maybe several times a week, maybe twice a week. And until they find you a job, they're going to keep meeting with you. They're going to keep updating your resume. That they're going to keep doing job searches. That they're going to keep putting you in contact with these businesses, and then they will stay with you, kind of holding your hand until you've been at a job for 5, 6 months, and then they let you go. And if you need a new job, you can go to them. So that is a great resource that I think a lot of people need to know about and don't know about. BJC is great. I would say ADAPT in Missouri has better caseworkers, but I would say overall BJC has better services. And they can also do things like get you bus fare, or get you reduced bus tickets, or just get you bus passes period, for like a month or so. Or even sometimes don't quote me on this, they may be able to get you bus passes for an entire year, or like an entire season, so like all fall, all spring, all summer, whatever. um BJC has a lot of great services. So does ADAPT. Again, ADAPT, I have witnessed from my friends, has better social workers. They have less load. The problem with BJC social workers is that, and that's barring Jewish Christian for anyone wondering, BJC, they have a lot of people in their system. So some of their caseworkers may have 60 to 100 clients that they see every month, and they're seeing like they might see 5 people, 10 people in a day. They have to keep notes and keep track of all these people. So, if you want really great service, but you're kind of more independent and you don't need someone, on your ass, or, as like micromanaging you, go BJC. If you want, also they have in-house therapy that is free. There is a waiting list. It may take up to 6 months or sometimes more, but there's free therapy. They have intensive therapy. They are connected to psych wards and hospitals. So if you get hospitalized for mental health reasons, they can help you take care of that. You can get a psychiatrist for free. All this stuff, all these services are free. I want to plug more than just mental health services, but that is a big part of it. Is knowing that you can get help in your community, and I will do some research later and try to find some great. Actually, you know what? I want you guys to comment down below really good mental health services that you are aware of in your city. Any city you're in, major or not, wherever you're watching from, comment below some services and plug people, put people on to some services, you know, um, preferably free that they can get in the community for some help. Um, it just slipped my mind. What was it? Hmm. It'll come back to me. It'll come back to me. It'll come back to me.